What's going on, everybody? Today we are talking about Season 1, Episode 1 of Doctor Who Space Babies. It is finally here. The 60th anniversary specials were great. It was a great introduction to Shooty at the end of the Giggle and into the church on Ruby Road, and so I have been absolutely excited to really get going here and see what it is that Shooty and Millie Gibson really bring to their respective roles in this new season of Doctor Who. I know that it is kind of crazy that Doctor Who is rebranding in this way. I personally want to call the show Series 14, but with this rebranding, it is being called Season 1, so we're going to keep it that way just to keep things simple. But let's not waste any more time and get into the episode. First off, let's talk about this intro. I know that in early reviews of the season, that one of the things that reviewers kept saying was that the beginning of this first episode was going to be very exposition heavy, and I definitely can say that that is what I felt as well. I know that with the fact that a lot of new people are probably going to come to the show now that Disney Plus is doing promotion for Doctor Who, that they kind of want to make sure that there's a little bit of room to kind of get people comfortable with what Doctor Who is and what it's about. So even though I could definitely tell, like, oh, we're doing an exposition scene here, I still think, like, they did it in the best way that they can. Ruby is the audience surrogate, just like the rest of the Doctor's companions, and so it's okay that the Doctor is taking the time to explain something to the audience as long as he's doing it through an audience surrogate like Ruby Sunday and his companions at large. I will say, though, that I do agree with what some other people are saying, that this is usually something that happens over the course of several episodes in a season, and it's not something that is usually front loaded onto the audience. But then again, in the age of streaming, you kind of have to serve that information on a silver platter as fast as you possibly can. So, like I said, it's not the best way to handle things, probably, but I was okay with the way that it was done. In terms of the kind of rapport of the Doctor and Ruby and the Doctor's personality himself, I think it's really good here. I didn't see anything in these first two episodes, and I did watch both of these episodes, so I won't be making a review for the second episode of the season. I really, really like what I'm seeing here in this dynamic. I think it is interesting that Shooty's Doctor is so much more willing to give information and be vulnerable with his companion Ruby in a way that the Doctor has never been before. We've seen in previous series of Doctor Who that companions will ask questions about the Doctor's life and his family and all of that stuff, and the Doctor is usually pretty tight-lipped about any of it. And in the past, that has made sense. We know that the Ninth and 10th Doctors were really still dealing with the Time War and the way in which his people were killed, and so it made sense that the Doctor was not really open to having those conversations because he was still dealing with a lot of pain. But as we know from the giggle, the 15th Doctor is more open because he's actually done some healing. He specifically took time out of his life as the 14th Doctor to do that work, and so now he is in a much better place where he can start to reckon with his history in a way that he hasn't done before, and that allows him to be able to connect with his companion in a way that he's never done before. And I really do like that. I was a little unsure of how it would play when we first met Ncuti as the 15th Doctor, but I'm liking it so far. I will say one of the things that I'm not so certain about right now is the other ways in which the 15th Doctor is different from his counterparts. I do feel like Ncuti has that excitement that the Doctor has. I do feel like Ncuti has this kind of zest for life and this very much hunger for learning that the other Doctors have. But I don't know necessarily that I have been able to pinpoint what is the thing that sets him apart in terms of action, in terms of his philosophy about the way that he is going to live his life. Moving on, we get the TARDIS up and running, and the Doctor and Ruby find themselves on a spaceship that is seemingly abandoned. As they walk the lower decks, the spaceship looks a little bit run down, like it hasn't been tended to for quite a while. The only sign of life is this slimy looking monster that spooks the Doctor and Ruby pretty heartily, to the point where the Doctor is a little taken aback that something like that monster has instilled in him a fear that he has never known before. They make their way upstairs and they are able to stumble upon an observation deck where the Doctor and Ruby are able to look out and see all of the stars and planets of the galaxy. This is really Ruby's first glimpse at what it is like traveling with the Doctor and being able to see all of the wonders of the universe. I really loved this scene because it was kind of a callback to The End of the World, which was Christopher Eccleston's second episode in his era of Doctor Who. In that episode, the Doctor tells Rose that you spend your whole life wondering when it is that you're gonna die, and you never consider that maybe you survive. And that is a similar sentiment that Ruby Sunday says here to the Doctor in so many words. So I thought that was a really great callback. And I loved Ncuti's enthusiasm in this moment as the 15th Doctor is telling Ruby that he keeps going for days like these. The Doctor has seen so much pain and suffering in his life, but he keeps going because every day is a new day to explore something that is beautiful. There may be so much darkness in the world, but if you keep going, there's so many more great things that you may be able to explore. This is the reason that the 12th Doctor kept going in Twice Upon a Time. He was very much ready to go. He was very much ready to die. But it was because he came to the realization that every new day can bring something beautiful that he decided to keep going. And it's so poignant that the doctor, with all of the pain and suffering that he has witnessed, is able to come to the realization that this is what life is all about. There are good days and there are bad days, and neither of those have to spoil the other. Eventually, the doctor and Ruby find themselves in a room where there are a bunch of babies that are floating in these tanks full of water. And the doctor comes to the realization that the spaceship is a baby making farm, essentially a place where babies are being artificially grown. As they make their way deeper into the ship, they realize that the ship actually is being manned by other babies. Yes, these are babies that have been artificially grown and have developed enough to the point where they are able to run the ship themselves. They were abandoned about 6 years prior, and they have been desperately waiting for their mommy and daddy to return. This is another great example of the way that the Doctor and Ruby operate well together. This is another great scene that shows the energy that Ncuti Gatwa has as the Doctor and the playfulness and vulnerability that the 15th Doctor has as he is making a wonderful effort to help Ruby console these babies, and at the same time is able to figure out what it is that is going on. The Doctor and Ruby figure out that the only one that is taking care of these babies at all is an automated nanny that has been programmed to do daily feedings and diaper changes for the babies. She also does mandatory nose blowings. They also learn from the babies that this monster showed up around 6 years ago, and they are terrified of this monster just as babies typically are. But of course, Ruby and the Doctor console the babies and let them know that there is nothing to be afraid of, and they go on to investigate further. The Doctor and Ruby are eventually able to track down this automated nanny and come to the realization that she is, in fact, a real human being. She is the last crew member that has stayed on this ship after everyone else deserted, and she has been taking care of the babies for the last 6 years. They end up learning that the original crew ended up abandoning the ship 6 years ago after the government shut down the plant due to a recession. And so that has left Nanny, whose real name is Jocelyn, to take care of the babies and tend to their everyday needs. However, she tells the Doctor and Ruby that the ship is slowly losing oxygen and that it is quite certain that they will eventually die, and she cannot bear to look the babies in the face and let them know that. The Doctor offers that they take all of the ship's inhabitants into the TARDIS and back to their home planet. The problem is that with the monster downstairs, there is some distance between them and trying to get to the TARDIS. With a plan set in motion, the Doctor decides that he needs to get to the bottom of who this creature is, why they're there, and how to get rid of it. And Ruby, of course, has to tag along with very little resistance from the Doctor. This is another way in which the Doctor is more open, more trusting, and more willing to let his companion really kind of carry the weight of what it is that they are doing. Let me just say that I love the pacing of the episode. Up to this point, I feel like everything is moving at a pace that it needs to be moving. Everything is moving very fast, but in a way that is believable, and information is coming at us at this point at a speed that I think is appropriate for how the Doctor is getting the information that he needs to be able to act. I also really want to reiterate once again that the dynamic between the Doctor and Ruby is really great. I do like having a more trusting Doctor. I do like having a Doctor that is willing to have someone else carry the burden of the stuff that they are doing. I know that that is typically the dynamic with the Doctor and his other companions, but there are a lot of times in other series with other doctors where the Doctor is more resistant to letting their companion get in on the danger. And here it is really nice to see a Doctor that is like, okay, come on, get in the trenches with me. So I'm very interested to see where the dynamic between the Doctor and Ruby kind of goes from here. We're getting into the home stretch here of the episode as the Doctor and Ruby are scouring the ship for any details they might be able to find on what exactly created these babies, what their purpose is, and what exactly this monster might be. And the Doctor quickly comes to the realization that the ship has created the babies and created the monster, thinking that because children like stories, and those stories usually have scary monsters in them, that the babies would appreciate a companion such as this monster. It is a aspect of the episode that I wish had been explored a little bit more. I don't really understand it. That being said, I do think there is some connection between what happened in the Giggle with the mythical figure of the Toymaker and what is happening here. I think there is some mysticism that is still afoot, even though the Toymaker is out of existence, and I am interested to see what exactly we are doing here throughout the rest of the season with this thread. The Doctor realizes that because the ship created the babies and the monster, that the monster is technically just a scared little baby himself. And so when Jocelyn opens up an airlock to try to suck the monster out of the ship, he realizes that the monster needs to be saved and that Jocelyn needs to be stopped. And so, with the combined effort between him and Ruby, they are able to do that and able to get Jocelyn to the realization that every single person on this ship deserves to be saved. The Doctor is reeling from the fact that he himself is an orphan. Ruby is reeling from the fact that she has been an orphan her whole life and is in search of her birth parents. You can really tell that the Timeless Child arc is gonna be sticking around in this new Russell T Davies era, with the emphasis on the fact that the Doctor is an orphan and the kinship that he feels with Ruby Sunday. Because of this, there is a lot of callback to the church on Ruby Road as we see the Doctor remembering the moment of Ruby being left on the front steps of the church on Ruby Road. And there definitely seems to be some kind of through line that is going to be happening throughout the new season, as I'm sure the identity of Ruby's parents, or the conclusion of her search for her parents, is going to come by the end of the season. I do think that there is something that might be getting in the way of that. As I said earlier, there seems to be more toy maker shenanigans that are going on here, as memories seem to be bleeding into real life. So there may be something more at stake here that is going to tie into Ruby and her entire parentage. And it's going to be very interesting to see the way that it plays out. As we get to the end of the episode, the Doctor realizes that because the babies have a lot of waste that they have been expelling for the past 6 years, which the ship has been taking on for the past 6 years, that it has been able to translate that into methane that is now able to power the ship and is more than enough to get them home. So as the episode ends, the Doctor lets it rip, and they make their way toward the baby's home planet, making sure that everyone gets home safe and sound. As we get to the end of the episode, we see the Doctor make his obligatory offer to Ruby Sunday that she get to travel with him and come on these adventures with him, a offer which she gladly accepts, and they get back into the TARDIS and go off on to what is going to become one of many more adventures. I will say that I think this relationship might be moving too fast, and this is something that I think will be a little bit apparent as we get into the next episode. While I do enjoy how open and honest the 15th Doctor is with Ruby Sunday about his own parentage and the genocide of the Time Lords, I don't really know that I am loving just how open he is being with Ruby. I do think things are moving a bit too fast at a pace where typically the Doctor takes more time to warm up to his companions and trust them. I don't know if this means that the show is going to explore that and that all of this is intentional. I am kind of hoping it is, and that it is not just something that is being hand waved away. If it is, we'll see how exactly it plays out, but I am hoping that we explore this a little more, especially because I want to make sure that the 15th Doctor has an arc. I don't want the Doctor to just be done exploring their psyche and exploring who they are as a person. I know that 14 did the work so that 15 could continue to exist and exist happily, which is something that I want for the Doctor, but I still want there to be something that the Doctor is having to reckon with, because I think that's when we get really great character moments on this show. Overall, I think it's a very strong first outing. I don't really like when Doctor Who makes such a spectacle of itself, so I'm glad we got just your typical base story here, but I still very much enjoyed what we get in the second episode, and I am very excited to discuss it with you all. So, until next time, see you later.